Hi, this is Arango of littleguycgi.com, and today I want to show you how to make a full female character in Blender 2.75a. So let's get started. Okay, if this is your first time in Blender, I recommend you go to File, User Preferences, go to Input, and then choose Select with left click. Blender's default select is with right click, and this may confuse you if you're coming from Adobe or other 3D programs. Also, while you're in here, click on add-ons, and you want to make sure you have a check mark next to a 3D view, 3D navigation. And if you scroll down, you also want to have a few check marks for Mesh F2, Mesh Inset Polygons, Mesh Loop Tools, and also Mesh Relax. And also, you might want to put a check mark in here, which is just activates the pie menus that you'll see popping up as I go through my shortcut keys. Okay, what this tutorial is going to be about is we're going to go over a female character. We're going to put hair on her, clothes on her, and we're probably going to unwrap and also put a normal map on her as well. So this should be interesting. Looking forward myself to seeing what the result will be. Okay, when you first come into Blender, you see this cube and you are in object mode. Object mode is where you move whole objects around like this cube. To get around Blender, if you put a check mark next to the navigation tab and you when I showed you in the user preferences in the beginning, when you click on this navigation right here, you can just select front, back, left, right, top, bottom, and just very quickly manipulate your view. And when you're working in 3D, you're going to find that you need to manipulate that view a lot. You also can hold your middle mouse button, and this also will let you rotate your view. Okay, so what we're going to do now is we are going to click the front view. Okay, and then what we're going to do is go into edit mode. So here we're in object mode. You can see right here that this says we're in object mode. You can click here and select edit mode. Now in edit mode, this is where you manipulate vertices, edges, and faces, and this is basically where you do most of your work, and definitely where we'll be doing most of our work as far as this tutorial. The buttons that you use to select vertices, edges, and faces are these three buttons right here. Okay, what we want to do now is we want to press the W menu to bring up our specials menu, and then we want to choose subdivide smooth. As soon as you select subdivide smooth and you look to your left, if you look over where it says number of cuts, you can take this up to 3. It's funny, improvements are always being made to Blender, and I love the fact that all of us Blender users, whenever something new comes out, we have access to it. We don't have to worry about paying $100 or $60 or however, like some of the other 3D programs. However, sometimes with the upgrades come changes. When I used to do my basic head shaping, which is what we're doing right now, I used to just select this one dot right here. It's funny, Blender, the subdivide smooth actually makes the cube smoother now. It actually does a better job now. So now what you're going to do, and I just mentioned that if you had seen some of the other tutorials, this is just some of the things that I've learned since then. You want to select these 3 dots, or 3 vertices right here. Then what we're going to do is select right. You're then going to press O to turn on your proportional editing tool. I'm going to roll the mouse wheel to zoom back. You're then going to press G, and by pressing G, you're able to see that area of influence, which is from the proportional editing tool. So I'm just going to pull down, and as I pull down, I'm going to roll my mouse wheel back. And this is nice because it gives us very quickly gives us a general shape of a human head. We'll go to the back by holding the middle mouse button and turning. We're going to press A to deselect. And then we're going to press A to select everything to make sure everything's, when we press A again, because everything's selected, we'll know for sure that nothing is selected. So we pressed A there, and I'm going to press C. for paint select. I'm going to go here and I'm going to select face select. So I'm going to press C for paint select. Then I'm going to right click to get out of paint select. I'm then going to select here. To go back to right view, I'm going to press G to see the area of influence. Then I'm going to press Y to pull this head back just slightly. Then I'm going to left click to lock in. Okay, what we want to do now is press A to deselect. We're going to hold the middle mouse button and turn to the side. We're going to press C for paint select. We're going to select these 8 faces right here, and you'll notice that we tend to select 4 and 8 faces as we go through this tutorial. We're now going to select here to go to the right view. I'm actually going to press N, go to display, and turn off that grid floor. Then I'll press N to take that menu away again. Okay, with those faces selected, what we're going to do now is press G to see our proportional edit. We'll roll it in, roll the mouse wheel in, I should say, a little bit just to shrink the area of influence. Then we'll press Z and pull down just slightly. I'm going to roll the mouse wheel in a little bit more. Then we'll left click to lock in. We'll press O to turn off the proportional editing tool. You can see that this represents the proportional editing tool here. So when it's on, it's blue. When it's off, it's gray. So with this selected, these 8 faces and the proportional editing tool turned off, we're going to press E to extrude on the Z axis. See, my preview line disappeared. That's what that bluish purplish line is. So if you don't see the line and you're able to move your faces like this, just press Z again. And it'll, constrain your movement like you want it to do to go straight down. And see this right here, we want this to be flat. So a nice way to have this be flat very quickly is we just press S to scale on the Z axis, 0, and then left click to lock in. Okay, now what we're going to do is we're going to hold the middle mouse button and turn to the side. We're going to press S to scale, and then we're going to press Shift Z. And the reason why we did that is by pressing Shift Z, we can now scale on every direction but the Z axis. So I'm just pulling my mouse to scale, and I'm going to left click to lock in. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to press A to deselect. I'm going to press Control R to bring up a loop cut. I'm going to roll the mouse wheel one time to put in 2 loop cuts, and then I'm going to left click to lock in. And then first time you put in a loop cut, when you left click just one time, you can move your loop cuts. When you left click twice, they're locked in. So I only left click once, so I'm going to pull this down just slightly. Then I'm going to left click to lock it in. I'm then going to press S to scale on the Z axis. So the neck looks kind of like that. I'm going to left click to lock in. I'm going to hold the middle mouse button and turn to the side. Okay, now I'm going to press S to scale on the Y axis. It's a little. Because the way that the human neck works, the human neck is actually, particularly for a female, is thinner in the front, but it's going from front to back is actually, kind of wide on the side. So actually, what we're going to do now is we're going to select front to go to front view. I'm going to press A to deselect those lines right there. When you look here, you can see you're in front perspective mode. We want to be in front orthographic mode. And what orthographic mode is kind of like a 3D blueprint way of looking at things. So you can get to that just by clicking here. See, it says view perspec/ortho. So we'll just click that. And it's very important that this orange dot is directly in the center of your model for what we're about to do now. This is your origin point, and it's important because we're about to erase this geometry here and then put a mirror modifier on it. And for it to work correctly, you want this origin point to be, directly right here. So anyway, we're going to click face select. We're going to press Z, go to wireframe. I'm going to put my mouse about here, press B, then left click and hold and drag and select to grab all of these faces on this half of the head and the neck that we have here. I'm going to press X to bring up our delete menu. Then I'm going to choose faces to delete. I'm then going to pull this out just a little. I'm going to go to what looks like a wrench. This is our modifier button. I'm going to click here where it says add modifier. I'm going to click here, and then I'm going to go to mirror. And now you can see this right here is what that modifier did, and it's mirroring the geometry from this side to this side. To make this geometry not look faded, we can just go right here, and we also want to make sure that we turn on the clipping as well. Okay, and as we go through this, I'm going to try to attempt to say as much as I can remember every key shortcut. Sometimes I'll go through with some of my other tutorials, and if there's multiple issues that pop up for people, like sometimes people have issues with putting loop cuts in, or the origin point. I'm not going to get into possible things that I think could happen, because we have a lot of area to cover. But if any questions pop up as you're working your way through this tutorial, just send me a message and I'll try to get back to you with in a decent amount of time. Okay, what we're going to do now is we're going to put our mouse cursor right here, not our mouse wheel. We're going to press B. We have face select on. We're going to select this bottom amount of faces right here. I'm going to press C for paint select. I'm going to hold the middle mouse button, which acts like an eraser. I'm going to right click to get out of that. I'm going to press O to turn on the proportional editing tool. Then I'm going to press G and then Z and just pull this up. Pull this just slightly about here. I'm going to press A to deselect. Okay, now what we're going to do is I'm going to press the Z key and select solid. I'm going to hold the middle mouse button just to see the bottom of this here. I'm going to press O to turn off this proportional editing tool, which you can see is on there. I'm then going to press C for paint select, and I have face select selected. I'm going to select these 8 faces right here. I'm going to right click to lock in. I'm then going to press W, go to loop tools, and then I'm going to choose circle. And you'll see it as loop tools as long as you selected, as long as you did what I showed you in the beginning as far as putting check marks next to the add-on. So I'm going to select circle, and this just very quickly makes that into a circular shape. Those 8 faces there. Okay, now I'm going to select front view, and then with those 8 faces still selected, I'm going to zoom back some. I'm going to press E to extrude and then Z, and I lost my preview window, so I'm going to press Z again. See that bluish purplish line? That's a preview line showing us where we're going to go, and I'm just going to come down to about here, then left click to lock in. Okay, what we're going to do now is press A to deselect, roll the mouse wheel to zoom in. I'm going to hold shift and middle mouse button to pan. I'm then going to press Control R to put one loop cut in. I left click to kind of lock it in, but not totally. I'm going to move it up to about here, about there. I'm going to left click to lock that in. Okay, I'm going to press Control R again to put another loop cut in. I'm going to put this in about here. I'm going to press A to deselect. I'm going to press Control R to put another loop cut in, and I'll put that right there is fine. So I'll left click, then left click again. Well, 2 left clicks locks it in, so it's good. I press A to deselect right there. Okay, what we're going to do now is we're going to press Z to go into wireframe. We're going to go to vertices select. We're going to press B for box select. We're going to grab all of this right here. We're going to pull this to the side about like that. We're going to press A to deselect. We're going to press B for box select. We're going to select right here. We're going to press S to scale on the x-axis like that, and pull to the side a little bit more like that. Okay, now we're going to select right to go in the right view. We're going to press S to scale on the y-axis about like that. See this line, how this is coming right down? We want to take these faces and pull them back so that this line is pretty much going straight. So we'll just take our manipulator, pull back like that, and then now what we're going to do is press A to deselect, B for box select. We're going to grab these faces right here and we're going to push them forward like that. Okay, we're going to press A to deselect, and we're going to press B for box select. Let's push this forward about like that. Okay, now with these faces still selected, we're going to press R to rotate on the x-axis. About like that. We're going to press S to scale. Then we're going to see this right here. We're going to push this line so it kind of goes along with this line right here. So we're just going to push this forward some, like that. I'm going to press R to rotate on the x-axis a little bit more. I'm going to press S to scale on the y-axis a little bit more. About like that. Okay, now I'm going to hold the middle mouse button to turn. I'm going to press A to deselect. I'm going to press Z and then choose solid. I'm going to hold shift and the middle mouse button to pan. I'm going to hold the middle mouse button to look right here. I'm going to go to face select. I'm going to select here, hold shift and select here. I'm then going to go to front view. Yeah, front view. Then I'm going to press E to extrude on the Z axis. Press Z again if it doesn't give you what you want. About to here. I'm going to push this in like this. I'm going to hold the middle mouse button to look to the back. I'm going to press S to scale on the Y axis. I'm going to press R to rotate on the X axis. I'm going to press S to scale on the Y axis again. And what I'm doing here is when I scale, it's making it turn. I want it to be a certain way. So that's why I'm kind of like going back and forth, if you will. Okay, I'm going to press S to scale on the Y-axis a little bit more. I'm going to press R to rotate on the X-axis, about like that. I'm going to press A to deselect. I'm going to press Control R to put a loop cut right here. I'm going to left-click to lock in, left-click again to totally lock in. I'm going to press S to scale on the Y-axis right here, like that. And now I'm going to hold the middle mouse button and just take a look. Okay, what I'm going to do now is roll the mouse wheel to zoom in. I'm going to go to face select, select here. I'm going to hold shift, select here, 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 and here. And I'm going to press X to bring up our delete menu and then choose faces to delete. Okay, now I'm going to go to vertice select. I'm going to zoom in. I'm going to select here, hold shift, select here and here. Then I'm going to zoom back by rolling the mouse wheel. I'm going to hold the middle mouse button to turn. I'm going to press E to extrude, no axis, pull out, about like that. I'm going to zoom in some. I'm going to press and select here. Now I'm holding shift. I'm selecting here while holding shift, and here as well as here. So now I'm going to press F to fill that area right there. I'm going to hold the middle mouse button to turn to the back. I'm going to press A to deselect. Hold the middle mouse button just to take a look. I'm going to select here, hold shift, select here, here, and here, and press F to fill. Now I'm holding the middle mouse button and turn back towards the front. Okay, I'm going to zoom back. I'm going to press A to deselect. I'm going to press Z for wire select. I'm going to select here. And I'm going to hold Control, hold the right mouse button, and draw a lasso select right here. And I'm just going to push this up slightly like that. I'm going to press A to deselect and Z and select solid. Okay, I'm going to roll the mouse wheel in. I'm going to hold the middle mouse button and turn to the side. I'm going to go to edge select. I'm going to hold Alt. Alt will allow us to select this entire edge loop right there. So while holding Alt, I'm going to select here. Now I have the whole edge loop selected. I'm going to go to front view. I'm going to press E to extrude on the Z axis. I'm going to pull straight down to about here. Left click to lock in. Pull to the side some. Then I'm going to press S to scale on the Z axis 0. Left click to lock in just to flatten that out. I'm just going to push this down a little bit more. I'm going to hold the middle mouse button to see right here. I want this to be a circular shape, so I'm going to press W, which brings up our specials menu. I'm going to go up to loop tools and then select circle. Okay, what you want to make sure that you do is see how the legs are kind of positioned to come more straight down. You want to push this forward just a little bit. We'll select front view now. We'll press E to extrude on the Z axis. Bring this down to about there. Left click to lock in. Okay, and you're going to press S to scale on the X axis. That. Left click to lock in. We'll turn to the side and we'll press S to scale on the Y axis like that. And you just want to push this forward just slightly. So now we'll turn back to the front. I'm going to press S to scale on the X axis a little teeny bit more. I'm going to press E to extrude on the Z axis about to here. Left click to lock in. Now see how we still have this line selected here near the bottom of what's going to be the knee. What you want to do is turn to the side. And then you want to actually pull this line back a little bit. Okay, we'll select here to go back to the front, and in 3D you'll tend to go, front side, look around. That's how it has to be, because sometimes the way things look on the front view don't show you how it looks on the side view, so you have to maneuver your view around. Anyway, what we're going to do now is press E to extrude on the Z axis, come down to about here, press S to scale on the X axis, like that. I'm going to hold the middle mouse button and turn back. Now we're going to press S to scale on the Y axis, about like this. And you see this knee right here, how this line is passing the knee? You don't want that. So you're just going to pull back here. We'll press S to scale on the Y axis again. And if you're struggling to get these proportions right, don't let it bother you too much, because as long as you have the basic shapes in, we can adjust things fairly easily in sculpt mode. So we're going to select front to go back to front view. I'm going to hold shift and the middle mouse button to pan. I'm going to press E to extrude on the Z axis and come down about like that. I'm going to press S to scale on the X axis. I'm trying to take this up a little bit. I'm going to hold the middle mouse button and turn to the side, and you can see that right there. It needs to be fixed. We're going to press S to scale on the Y axis like that. Okay, we're going to select front to go back to the front view. We're going to press S to scale on the X axis here. We're going to press E to extrude on the Z axis. We're going to take this down to about here. I'm going to hold the middle mouse button and hold shift and the middle mouse button to pan, so you can see this. See this hole that we have here? You can press Control F, and this brings up your menu for faces, and then you can go to grid select, and that'll quickly fill that in for you. If you by some chance don't have grid select, you can always do it manually. It's that's the grid fill is just a quick way to fill that. And if you were going to fill it manually, what you would do is make sure you're at edge select. You would hold Alt, you would select the loop right there, and then you could just press F, and then that would fill that in for you. So I'm going to hold the middle mouse button and turn, and our main concern is these faces right here. We're going to press Control R, left click one time, and push this up a little bit right there. Actually, I think I'm going to hold Alt and select this loop here and pull this up a little. So what we're going to do now is go to face select here, hold shift, select here. We're going to press S to scale on the X axis. Then we're going to press E to extrude on the Y axis. I'm going to press S to scale on the Y axis 0 just to flatten that out. Now I'm going to press S to scale on the X axis. Take that out like that. Then we're going to go to face select this edge here, hold shift, select this edge, and push this down just like that. And you're going to press press and hold Control, and then press R to put a loop cut in. We'll slide this back a little bit, left click to lock it in, left click again to totally lock it in. You're going to select here, hold shift and select here, and then push this down like that. Okay, now with edge select on, we're going to select this edge right here. We're going to push this out a little bit. We're going to hold the middle mouse button and change the angle like this. We're going to hover our mouse right around here, press A to deselect that edge that was right there, press Control R to put a loop cut right here, left click. once, left click a second time to totally lock in. We want this to be straight, so we're going to press S to scale on the Y axis 0 and then left click to lock in. And then we're just going to, with edge select on, we're going to select here. Push this out to the side. A little, not too much. Select here. And if this manipulator gets in your way, you can press Control Space. Whoops, I'm wrong. I'm right. Control Space and you can temporarily take it away. So I'm going to select here. I'm going to press Control Space to bring it back. And then we're just going to select here and here. But I just selected there, held Shift and selected there, and pull this up. Something like that. Okay, what we're going to do now is press A to deselect. We're going to select here to go in the right view. We're going to zoom back. We're going to press Z. We're going to go to wireframe. We're going to hold Shift and the middle mouse button to zoom down. We're going to go to vertice select. We're going to hold Control, hold the right mouse button, select and grab right here. We're going to press O to turn on the proportional editing tool, which you can see is on right there. We're going to press G to see it, and then Y to pull back something here, and then left click to lock in. We're now going to press A to deselect, B for box select. We're going to grab these vertices right here. Zoom in so you can see that. I'm zooming back out by rolling the mouse wheel. Then I'm going to press G and then Y and just pull this back some. Just rolling the mouse wheel a little bit to change the geometry around it a little. I'm going to left click to lock that in. Okay, now we're going to press A to deselect. We're going to zoom back some. I'm going to hold Shift and the middle mouse button to pan down. We're going to go to face select. I'm going to hold Alt and select right here, which allowed me to select that whole edge loop there. I just rolled the mouse wheel to zoom back. I'm going to press S to scale in the Y axis to pull this in a little bit. And I'm going to left click to lock in. Now I'm going to press R to rotate on the X axis. About like that. I'm going to press A to deselect. Okay, what we're going to do now is press Z to go to solid view. I'm going to hold the middle mouse button to turn. I'm going to click here to turn off the proportional editing by selecting disable. I'm going to zoom in. I'm going to go to edge select. I'm going to select here, hold Shift and select here. I'm going to hold the middle mouse button to take a look. I'll select here as well. I'm going to hold the middle mouse button to turn back. I'm going to push down to about here. Hold Shift and the middle mouse button to pan in. I'm going to go to vertice select here. Pull this to the side. I'm going to go to edge select here, and here, and here. And push this down some more. Just making sure the geometry is not getting messed up there. We'll pull this out. Push this up just a little. Hold the middle mouse button to turn. Push this down right there. Push this back some a little. Okay, we're going to go to face select. We're going to select here, hold Shift and select here. We're going to temporarily turn off clipping, so we're going to select here. We're going to hold the middle mouse button just so we can get a better view. I'm going to press E to extrude. Come straight back, left click to lock in. I'm going to turn clipping back on, then press S to scale. And I'm just going to push this closer together like that. Press S to scale on the X axis a little. Hold the middle mouse button to turn. Okay, now we're going to press A to deselect. We're going to select right view. We're going to hold Shift and the middle mouse button to pan. I'm going to press Z to go into wireframe. I'm going to go to vertice select. I'm going to hold Control, hold the right mouse button, and I'm selecting all of this here, kind of dodging that little geometry there. Okay, what you're going to do now is press O to turn the proportional editing tool on. You're going to press G. We're going to press Z and push this down. I'm going to roll this down a little. About like that. Left click to lock in. Okay, now we're going to press A to deselect. We're going to go to Edge Select. We're going to press O to turn off the proportional editing tool. We're going to hold Alt and select this edge right here. We're going to hold Shift and select this edge. Hold the middle mouse button just to make sure it went all the way around. We're going to select right. Now we're going to press, we're going to pull back some. Push up a little. Now we're going to press S to scale on the Y axis a little bit. Pull this back just a little bit more. Okay, now we're going to press A to deselect. We're going to press Z to go to solid view. We're going to press Control R, put a loop cut right here. Left click to lock in, left click again to totally lock in. I'm going to hold the middle mouse button to turn to the back. I'm going to hold Shift and the middle mouse button to pan. Hold the middle mouse button to turn a little bit. We're going to deselect right here. So I'm holding Shift because those were already selected. When I selected them, they deselected. Now I'm going to hold Alt and S and pull down. Be careful about this line right here touching, so you can actually pull over a little bit right there. Okay, I'm going to go to vertice select. I'm going to select and push this vertice here. Just make it not as stretched out. I'm going to hold the middle mouse button and turn back towards the front. Okay, with vertice select on, I'm going to select this vertice, push over here, just to straighten that out a little. Push this in slightly here. Pull this out slightly there. Okay. Okay, what we're going to do now is hold the middle mouse button, turn to the side, go to face select, roll the mouse wheel to zoom in, hold Shift and the middle mouse button to pan down. You're going to select here, hold Shift, select here, press O to turn on the proportional editing tool, press G, roll your mouse wheel to shrink your area of influence down, press Z to pull this down some, roll the mouse wheel up. Bit like that. I'm going to press G to see the area of influence, take it down almost the size of the area we have selected. I'm going to press S to scale on the X axis, Y axis, sorry. You hit push X by accident, you can just press Y and it'll switch to the other, access point. I'm going to press S to scale on the Z axis and left click to lock in. Okay, push A to deselect. Press O to turn off the proportional editing tool. Go to Edge Select. Select this edge here. Hold the middle mouse button to turn. Hold Shift and select this edge. You can pull up some here. Go to Vertice Select. Select here. Pull up some there. Hold the middle mouse button to turn. Let's grab this vertice and pull this up some. This vertice here. And pull this up some. Hold the middle mouse button to turn to the side. Select here, hold Shift, select here. I'm going to hold the middle mouse button to turn a little bit more. I'm going to press E to extrude on the X axis. Come out to about here. I'm going to press R to rotate on the Y axis. About like that. Come up like this. We'll actually come back this direction some. I'm going to press S to scale on the X axis. Push this down a little. In a little bit more like that. I'm going to go to vertice select and just push this down some here. A little, I'm going to go back to face select. I'm going to hold the middle mouse button to turn to the side. And I'm going to press Control R Move my mouse over here to put a loop cut there. Left click once to lock in, left click again to totally lock in. I'm then going to go to face select. I'm going to select here, hold shift, and select here, here, and here. Now I'm going to hold the middle mouse button to turn back to the front. I'm going to press E to extrude on the X-axis. Come out just like this to about here. Left click to lock in. Okay, now you're going to press S to scale on the X-axis 0. Left click to lock in. Hold the middle mouse button to turn your view. We want to make this circular, so we can do that fairly easily by pressing W to bring up our specials menu. Then we're going to go to loop tools and then select circle. Okay, we'll hold the middle mouse button to turn back to the front. Now we'll press S to scale. About like that. Push in here slightly. Now I'm going to press E to extrude on the X-axis. That. Just take a look. Looks fine. I'm going to press S to scale down just a little right there. I'm going to press E to extrude on the X-axis again. Press S to scale. I'm going to press E to extrude on the X-axis again. Press S to scale. Push this in a little bit here. Press S to scale down a little bit more. Okay, now we're going to press E to extrude on the X-axis. For the wrist, I'm going to hold shift and middle mouse button to pan. I'm going to press E to extrude on the X-axis again. To about there. I'm going to zoom in here. I'm going to hold the middle mouse button to turn the view. Okay, I'm going to roll the mouse wheel to zoom in a little. I'm going to press S to scale. Just slightly. I'm going to press Control R to put a loop cut in. Pull that up a little bit. Left click to lock in. I'm going to go to face select. I'm going to select here, hold shift, or hold the middle mouse button to turn. Now hold shift. And press E to extrude on the Y-axis. That. Same thing on the other side. Select here, hold the middle mouse button to turn. Hold shift, select here. Press E to extrude on the Y-axis, like that. Left click to lock in. Okay, I'm going to go to vertice select this vertice here. Pull this in some like that. I'm going to zoom in so you can see better. I'm going to hold shift and middle mouse button to pan. I'm going to select here. Pull this vertice over, select here. Push this vertice up some. And what we're going to do now is we're going to go to face select, and we are going to change the pivot point from Blender's default pivot point, which is the medium point. We're going to change this to individual origins. Now we're going to select let me wait a second. A to deselect. Even these are going to be where our fingers are coming from. I just wanted fingers being about the same size. Okay, so we're going to go to face select. We're going to select here, hold shift, select here, 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 and here. So I just held shift and selected all of those. Okay, normally if we tried to extrude this geometry out, this would come out as one piece. However, because we changed the pivot point to the medium point and then individual origins, now that sets us up to do this next thing. And what that is we're going to press Alt E, which brings up our extrude menu. We're going to choose individual faces. And now when we pull out, it looks like it's extruding. The geometry looks like it's extruding as one piece, but when I left click to lock it in, now when I press S to scale, you see that? How the fingers separate it. So, this is its own finger start. All of these, just a nice quick way of getting fingers started up. Okay, what you're going to do now is press E to extrude on the X-axis. And you're just going to come out like that. I'm going to hold the middle mouse button. I'm going to take the manipulator and draw these fingers a little bit further out. And because we have this individual origins on, we can actually press S to scale, and it actually taper the fingers down a little. Push this back a little. Let's take this one. We'll select it here. Pull that so that's a little bit longer. Okay. Okay, now what we're going to do is press A to deselect. We're going to press Control R, roll once. So we have, two loop cuts there. We'll do the same thing to the other fingers. Press A, press Control R, roll once. Left click to lock in, left click again to totally lock in. Press A to deselect. Press Control R, roll once. Left click to lock in, left click again to totally lock in. Press A, press Control R, roll once. Left click, and then left click a second time to totally lock in. Okay, what we're going to do now is press A to deselect. I'm going to hold Alt and Shift and select here, here. I'll hold the middle mouse button, turn here. Still holding Alt and Shift. I let go of Alt and Shift just to hold the middle mouse button to turn. Now I'm holding Alt and Shift again. Now I'm holding the middle mouse button, just adjusting the view. I'm taking the manipulator and just pushing straight back like this. Okay, and what we're going to do now is go to Face Select, select here, hold the middle mouse button to turn. The view, I'm going to press E to extrude on the Y axis and come out like this. I'm going to left click to lock in. I'm going to press S to scale on the Y axis 0 to flatten that out. I'm going to left click to lock in. I'm going to press S to scale on the Z axis a little. Then I'm going to press S to scale on the X axis like this. Back some. Okay, now I'm going to press E to extrude on the Y axis. Come out like this. E to extrude on the Y axis again. Like that. So I'll press S to scale. I'm going to press E to extrude on the Y axis again. Press S to scale. Okay, now you're going to press A to deselect. You're going to go to Edge Select. You're going to hold Alt and Shift and select here, 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 and here. I'm going to hold the middle mouse button just to turn the view. Holding Shift and Alt still. So now I have that. Oh, I held Shift and Alt again to get that last one. Shift would have did it by itself. But anyway, I'm going to take the manipulator and push this back some. And we're going to go to Face Select. We're going to select here. Let's roll the mouse wheel to zoom in. Hold Shift and select here. Still holding Shift and selecting here and here. Okay, now what you want to do is press Alt E to bring up your extrude menu. Select individual faces and then right click. And what that did was that created new separate pieces of geometry for all of these, where it's going to be knuckles. Then you're going to press S to scale down, left click to lock in, and then just pull up slightly like that. Okay, now I'm just going to roll the mouse wheel back to take a look. Hold Shift in the middle mouse button to pan. I'm going to press A to deselect, press Z to go to wireframe. I'm going to hold R and hold the right mouse button to do a loop select. And I'm just going to push this in some. I'm going to press A to deselect. I'm going to hold Control and the right mouse button and select all of this right here. Push this in some. So this should be when the arm comes down that the hand is about here. So We can always make adjustments later as well. So I'm going to press A to deselect. Okay, I'm going to hold the middle mouse button and turn to the side. Roll the mouse wheel to zoom in. Okay, I'm going to go to edge select. I'm going to select this edge right here. You zoom in so you can see better. I'm going to hold shift and the middle mouse button to pan. I'm going to hold shift and select here. I'm going to just push this down some. I'll pull this in some. Like that. Okay, I'm going to press A to deselect. I'm going to hold the middle mouse button and turn to the side. I'm going to hold Alt, select here, pull up. I'm going to go to Phase Select. I'm going to turn off clipping temporarily. I'm going to select here by holding Shift and select here. I'm going to press E to extrude, left click to lock in. Then I'm going to press S to scale. About like that. I'm going to turn the clipping back on. Now I'm going to press Control R to put a loop cut right there. Left click to lock in. Left click again to totally lock in. I'm going to go to Phase Select. I'm going to zoom in, hold Shift and select here, 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 and here. I'm going to press W. W brings up our Specials menu. I'm going to go to Loop Tools. And then when I select Circle, I'm going to pull out to the side some. I'm going to press S to scale. The middle mouse button. Just to take a look, I'm going to push forward some like this. Now what I'm going to do is press E to extrude, left click to lock in, S to scale. Hold the middle mouse button to turn to view, take the manipulator and push out some. Then I'm going to press E to extrude, left click to lock in, S to scale. And I'm just going to push out some a little bit more like that. The main thing we're trying to do here is just get the general shapes, and we can, adjust the geometry later on as long as the shapes are in there. So I just selected edge for edge select. I'm going to press A to deselect. Selecting right here, hold shift, select here. Whoops, press A to deselect, select here, hold shift, select here. Pull down this way. Holding the middle mouse button, rotate, pushing down just slightly there. What I'm going to do now is press A to deselect. Okay, so what we're going to do now is I'm going to hold shift and the middle mouse button just to pan up a little bit. I'm going to press A so I can see everything selected, and I press A again just to make sure nothing's selected. I'm going to press Control R to put a loop cut right here. I'm going to left click one time, left click again to lock it in. Then I'm going to press R to rotate on the X axis like this. Then left click to lock in. Okay, what we're going to do now is change this pivot point from individual origins back to Blender's default pivot point, which is the medium point. We're then going to go to Phase Select. We're going to hold Alt and select this edge right here. And once I select this, this will allow us to select this entire loop of faces right there. I'm then going to press Alt S. Spread the rib cage out a little bit. Left click to lock in. Okay, now what I'm going to do is press A to deselect. I'm going to press O to turn on the proportional editing tool. I'm going to press C to turn on paint select. I'm going to paint right here. I'm going to right click to get out of paint select. I'm going to press G to see the size of proportional editing. I'm going to roll the mouse wheel slightly just to increase it. I'm going to left click to lock in. I'm going to take the manipulator and pull to the side slightly. Now I'm going to hold Alt and press S just so I'm going to pull down to increase the size of this geometry. I'm going to left click to lock that in. Okay, now I'm going to press A to deselect. I'm going to press O to turn off the proportional editing tool. I'm going to move my mouse over here, press Control R, left click one time, which allows me to move this loop cut that we just put in. I'm going to move it down slightly. I'm going to left click a second time to lock it in. I'm going to press Control R to put another loop cut in. Because I clicked one time, I can move it up, so I'm going to move it up some, just like that. Then I'm going to left click to lock that in. Now I'm going to press S to scale on the X axis like this. And then left click to lock that in. Okay, I'm going to press A to deselect. I'm going to hold Shift and the middle mouse button to pan up. I'm going to hold Alt and select right here. I'm going to hold the middle mouse button to turn to the side. I'm going to hold Shift and select this edge to deselect that edge. I'm going to pull up some right here. I'm going to go to Face Select. I'm going to press C for Paint Select. I'm going to select all of this geometry right here. I'm going to right click to get out of Paint Select. Okay, now I'm going to press E to extrude, left click to lock in. Doesn't look like we did anything, but we just created new geometry on top of the old geometry. I'm going to press S to scale. Just about to there. I'm going to take the manipulator and push in some like this. I just held the middle mouse button just to take a look around the side. I'm going to press S to scale on the Z axis to rearrange this geometry, push this up higher and this down lower there. I'm going to, with Face Select still on, I'm going to select here. I'm going to press E to extrude, left click to lock in, and then press S to scale. Just push this in about like that. I guess I'm going to press S to scale on the Z axis. That. Holding the middle mouse button to turn just to get a better 3D look. I'm going to press E to extrude on the Y axis like that. And press A to deselect. Okay, I'm going to roll my mouse wheel to zoom back. I'm going to hold Shift and middle mouse button to pan. I'm going to go to Edge Select. I'm going to hold Alt, select this edge right here. I'm going to press Alt S, pull down to expand that out a little bit, left click to lock in. Okay, now I'm going to go to Vertice Select. I'm going to select right here, push this in. I'm going to roll the mouse wheel to zoom back. I'm going to press Control R to put a loop cut right here. I left click one time so I can move it, so I'm going to move this up just slightly. I'm going to left click to put that there. I'm going to press Alt S, scale down a little bit just to give it a little bit more volume to the thighs there. Okay, I'm going to press A to deselect. I'm going to select back to go to a back view. I'm going to roll my mouse wheel to zoom in. You want to make sure that you don't have vertices touching here, so I'm going to temporarily turn off clipping. I'm going to make sure I'm on vertice select. I'm going to select here. I'm going to take my manipulator and just pull to the side. I'm going to turn clipping back on. I'm going to press A to deselect. I'm going to roll the mouse wheel to zoom out a little, and then I'm going to select front to go back to a front view. Okay, and we're going to select back again. And what we're going to do is go to Face Select. We're going to zoom in. We're going to hold Shift and the middle mouse button to pan. To zoom in a little bit more. And I'm going to select here, 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 and here. I'm going to temporarily turn off clipping again. I'm going to press E to extrude, left click to lock in. I'm going to press S to scale. Then I'm going to pull this new geometry back a little bit. I'm going to go to Edge Select. I'm going to select this edge right here. I'm going to push this down some. Select this edge right here. I'm just going to pull that out a little. Okay, I'm going to turn clipping back on. I'm going to go to front view. I'm going to make sure I'm on Edge Select. I'm going to hold Alt. I'm going to select here. Okay, now we're going to press S to scale on the X axis. Left click to lock in. We're going to take our manipulator and push in some. We're going to press A to deselect. We're going to hold Alt. We're going to select here. We're going to push down some here. I'm going to go to Vertice Select. Select this vertice right here. Let me zoom in and hold the middle mouse button to turn. Take the manipulator and push down some, out a little bit. Right there. So take this vertice, push this down a little bit as well. Okay, now we're going to select front view. I'm going to hold Shift and middle mouse button to pan up. Still holding shift and I let go of the middle mouse button. Now I'm holding it again to pan up. We're going to go to vertices select, hold shift and select here. Take the manipulator and pull back some here. Click here. Pull back some here. So we'll push this back. A little bit further here as well. Okay, I'm going to press A to deselect. I'm going to press front to go to the front orthographic view. I'm going to hold shift and the middle mouse button to pan down. Okay, now we're going to start working on the face. So what we're going to do is with vertice select on, we're going to grab this vertice right here. We're going to push this down some. We're going to press A to deselect. We're going to select here. Hold shift and select here and here. Pull this up some. Push this down some here. I'm going to hold the mouse button to turn to the side. I'm going to select here, 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 and here, and here. Push this down some. Deselect here. Push it down a little bit more. I'm going to select here, hold shift, and select here, zoom in by rolling the mouse wheel in. Select here, here. Push this down some. I'm going to hold the middle mouse button to turn back towards the front. Holding the middle mouse button again. I'm going to press A to deselect. Okay, now we're going to press Control R to put a loop cut in. We're going to left click once, which allows us to move it. We're going to bring it to about here. Left click again to lock it in. With vertice select on, we're just going to grab this and push this down a little bit. I'm going to select this vertice, push this down some. Select here, here, and here. Push this down some like that. Okay, now we're going to go to face select. We're going to hold shift and select here, here, and here. We're going to press E to create new geometry. Left click to lock in. We're going to press S to scale just slightly. We're going to push in just slightly. Now we're going to press O to turn our proportional editing tool on. We're going to press G to see our area of influence. We're going to roll this down some. Bring it down some by rolling the mouse wheel. We're going to press Z. Take this straight up some. Roll the mouse wheel to control your lines around what's going to be where the eyes go at. Oh, here. Left click to lock in. Okay, you're going to press A to deselect. We're going to press O to turn the proportional editing tool off. We're going to go to edge select. We're going to select this edge right here. Push this in like this. Okay, now we're going to go to vertice select. Push in right here. Push in here as well. Here as well. We'll select here. Push this over. Push this over. Push that vertice over. We'll go to edge select. We're going to take this edge and move it more towards the center. So we'll push that over. We'll select here. Push this over more. Go to vertice select. Push this over. Okay, with vertice select on, we'll select here. Push this over. Push this over. Okay, I'm going to go to face select. Select here, here, and here. And I'm going to shrink this just a little. I'm going to press O to turn that proportional editing tool back on. I'm going to press S to scale on the Z axis. I like that, looks good. I press A to deselect. Okay, now we're going to select the right view. We're going to press O to turn our proportional editing tool off. We're going to select this edge select. We're going to hold shift and select here, here, here. Manipulator is getting in my way a little bit. We're going to push this down. Hold the middle mouse button to turn back to the side. Okay, we're going to press A to deselect. We're going to go to face select. We're going to select here, hold shift, select here, here, and here. We're going to press E to extrude, left click to lock in, S to scale. About here, we're going to press S to scale on the Y axis, like this. S to scale on the Z axis, like this. Left click to lock in. Okay, I'm going to hold the middle mouse button and turn to the side. Just to get a better view of this ear that we're about to make, I'm going to press E to extrude on the X axis. Pull this out a little like this. We're going to press S to scale, bring it up some, like that. We're going to press R to rotate on the Z axis to bring it, make it face forward some, like that. Pull it out a little bit. R to rotate, I might have said R to scale. R to rotate on the Z axis. Some more. We're going to zoom in. Okay, I'm going to hold the middle mouse button to turn a little bit. I'm going to zoom in. We're going to go to vertice select. We're going to select this vertice here. I'm zooming in a little bit more. I'm going to hold the middle mouse button to turn. It's hard to see, but there's a vertice right here. I'm holding shift and I'm selecting there. Now I'm going to press Alt M to bring up our merge menu. I'm going to choose at last. And now I'm selecting here, holding shift and selecting here. Now I'm going to press Shift R. Now what Shift R does is it repeats the last command. So instead of pressing Alt M, bringing up merge, looking for merge, then choosing at last, we can just press Shift R if we're doing a similar action like what we just did here. So the same thing here. We're going to click here first, hold Shift, select here, then we're going to press Shift R, and it just repeats that action of Alt merge, at last that we originally did right here. Okay, I'm going to zoom back, take a look. Zoom in, we'll take here, we'll push this down. We'll pull this to the side, back a little bit. Grab here, push this up a little. Okay, now we'll go to face select. We'll select here. I'm going to roll the mouse wheel in. I'm going to hold shift now and select here, here, and here. I'm going to hold E to extrude, left click to lock in, press S to scale, left click to lock in, holding the middle mouse button just to get a better view, pressing E to extrude, going in just slightly, or going in not too much anyway, pressing S to scale. Zoom in back to take a look. I'm going to press A to deselect. I'm going to hold shift and the middle mouse button to pan. Okay, I'm going to hold the middle mouse button and turn to the side. I'm going to go to vertice select. I'm going to pull back a little bit here. Pull back a little bit here. Here as well. Pull up a little bit here. Back some, push out a little bit. The reason why I'm doing this is you kind of want like a rounded, I know I had adjusted these before, you kind of want this to be rounded. I'm just pushing and pulling vertices there, so I'm going to press shift and middle mouse button to pan. I'm going to press A to deselect. Okay, now I'm going to go to face select. I'm going to press C for paint select. I'm going to select these faces here. I'm going to right click to get out of paint select. I'm going to press E to extrude, left click to lock in. We just created new geometry right here. We're now going to scale that new geometry down. Left click to lock in. Okay, we're going to press S to scale on the Z axis. About there. There's left click to lock in. I'm going to hold the middle mouse button and turn to the side. Actually, we'll just select right here. And what you want to do is push this forward about like that. Okay, now what you want to do is press A to deselect. You're going to roll the mouse wheel to zoom in. You're going to go to edge select here. You're going to select here, hold shift and select here. You're going to pull this back to about there. I'm going to hold the middle mouse button to turn towards the front. You're going to pull this out to the side some, like that. Push it up a little bit more. Okay, now we're going to press A to deselect. We're going to go to face select. We're going to press C for paint select and select all these faces here. Right click to get out of paint select. You're going to press X to bring up your delete menu. Choose faces to delete. Okay, now you're going to go to edge select. You're going to hold Alt. You're going to select right here. You're going to press E to extrude. Left click to lock in and create new geometry. Now you're going to press S to scale this new geometry in, about like that. Left click to lock in. You're going to press S to scale on the X axis like this. You're going to hold the middle mouse button and turn. You're going to pull straight back like this. Hold the middle mouse button and turn back to the front. You're going to go to vertice select, press A to deselect. With vertice select still on, you're going to grab this vertice here, push this in. Grab this vertice here, push that in. Okay, now you're going to press A to deselect. You're going to hold your mouse right here. You're going to press Control R to put a loop cut in. You're going to left click to lock in, left click again to totally lock in. You're going to go to vertice. You're still in vertice select, so you're going to select these 3 vertices here. Hold the middle mouse button and turn to the side just to get a better view. Select here, hold shift. I'm going to push up some and out some like that. In fact, these ones we're actually going to push it back some, down some. And just like everything else, you can adjust this later on. As long as the basic shape is in there, we're going to press A to deselect. Okay, now what we're going to do is roll the mouse wheel back, hold the middle mouse button, turn to the side, and press A to select everything. That way when I press A again, I know that absolutely nothing is selected. So now I'm going to press Control R to put a loop cut right here. I'm going to roll the mouse wheel 1 time. So I have 2 loop cuts. I'm going to left click to lock in, left click again to totally lock in. I'm going to press A to deselect. I'm going to grab this vertice here, push this down some, push it in some, grab here, push this in some, grab here, push this in some. And we're just kind of, you can kind of see the flow going there. It's kind of like what I'm looking at and what I'm thinking about as I'm doing this. Because our nose is going to come out from here. We're going to press A to deselect. Okay, now we're going to press Control R, put a loop cut right here. Left click to lock in, left click again to totally lock it in. And we're going to press A to deselect. We're going to go to face select. We're going to select here, 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 and here. We're going to press E to extrude, left click to lock in. Create new geometry. Now we're just scaling that new geometry down. We're going to press S to scale on the Z axis like this. Left click to lock in. Okay, I'm going to press S to scale on the X axis. I'm going to press S to scale on the Z axis just slightly. Then I'm going to take the manipulator and pull to the side just slightly. Okay, now I'm going to go to vertice select. I'm going to push down right here some. Push up here, and people out there like, he's moving fast. It's my tutorials are some of the longer tutorials online, and we still have a lot to cover, so I'm trying to get through this fairly quickly. This part anyway. So we're going to face select. We're going to select here, hold shift, select here, here, and here, and press and hold the middle mouse button to turn to the side. I'm going to press E and then Y, E to extrude, and then Y to extrude on the Z axis, back like that a little bit. Left click to lock in as the scale in sum. Just forward just a little. I'm going to press O to turn on the proportional editing tool. G to see the area of influence. I'm going to pull back just slightly. I'm going to press A to deselect. Okay, I'm going to hold the middle mouse button and turn to the side. I'm going to make sure I'm on face select. I'm going to press O to turn the proportional editing tool off. I'm going to select here, and here, and here, and here, and here. I'm going to hold the middle mouse button and turn to the side. I'm going to press E to extrude on the Y axis. About like that. Hold the middle mouse button to take a look. Okay, now we're going to press S to scale on the Z axis. Well, like that. Left click to lock in. I'm going to go to edge select. I'm going to select this edge right here. Held the middle mouse button to turn to the side. Just a little. I'm just pulling these back. I select this one. Pull this up. Pull this back. This one can come up more. Pull this up. Pull this back. Pull this up. Pull this back. Okay, I'm going to press A to deselect. I'm going to select this edge. I'm going to press G and Y. Push that back just a little. I'm now going to press Z to go to wireframe. I'm going to select front. I'm going to hold control, hold the right mouse button and draw a loop all around here. I'm going to zoom in. I'm going to press Z, then solid. I'm going to hold the middle mouse button just to get a more 3D look. I'm going to press R to rotate on the Z axis slightly. I'm going to press A to deselect. Okay, I'm going to zoom in. I'm going to put a loop cut right here. So I'm going to hover my mouse here. I'm going to press Control R. Left click to lock it in. Because I left clicked, I can move. I'm going to move it in just a little. Left click again, totally lock it in. Now I'm going to take the manipulator and pull back just slightly. Like that. Okay, I'm going to press A to deselect. I'm going to go to face select. I'm going to select here and here. I'm going to press Alt O, which turns on our connected proportional editing tool. It's different from the regular proportional editing tool in that even if the area of influence touches this lip here, it won't move that. And you can tell the difference because the regular proportional editing tool looks like a circle and the connected looks, you can see through it. So you can click here to choose connected proportional editing, or you can just press Alt O instead of O like we normally press. Anyway, I'm going to hold the middle mouse button. I'm going to press G to see the area of influence. I'm going to scale it down some. And then I'm going to press Y to bring this back some. Then left click to lock in. Just hold the middle mouse button and take a look at the front. Okay, we're going to press A to deselect. We're going to go to edge select. We're going to hold the middle mouse button, turn to the side, zoom in. I'm going to hold the middle mouse button to pan, roll the mouse wheel to zoom in. I'm going to select here, 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 and here. I'm going to press G to move on the Y axis and pull back a little like that. Hold the middle mouse button to take a look. Okay, I'm going to press A to deselect. I am going to click here to select disable to turn off connected proportional editing as well as proportional editing. Okay, I'm going to hold the middle mouse button, turn to the side. I'm going to go to vertice select. I'm going to select here, hold shift and select here. I'm going to pull this back some. I'm going to select here, hold shift and select here. Hold the middle mouse button to turn to the side. I'm going to take the manipulator and push forward some like that. Okay, I'm going to press A to deselect. I'm going to select this vertex here, pull this back some like that, hold the middle mouse button, turn to the side, put out just a tad more there. I'm going to go to face select. I'm going to zoom in. I'm going to hold here, hold shift and select here. I'm going to press E to extrude on the X axis, like this. I'm going to press S to scale. I'm going to take the manipulator and push this down some. I'm going to hold the middle mouse button and turn back. I'm going to pull this back. Don't want it going through. Face, push down a little bit right there. Hold the middle mouse button just to turn back towards the front. Okay, I'm going to press A to deselect. I'm going to go to vertex select. I'm going to select right here. Push this down a little bit. I'm going to temporarily turn off clipping. I'm going to hold the middle mouse button. I'm going to press A to deselect right here. I'm going to go to face select. I'm going to hold shift and select here and there. I'm going to zoom in. I'm going to press E to extrude. Left click to lock in. This is why we turn the clipping off, because we want this to split and not be connected. So that's why we turn clipping off. We're going to press S to scale like that. Okay, we're going to turn clipping back on. Now we're going to press E to extrude on the Z axis. And if you lost your preview line, just press Z again. Take it up, press S to scale. Left click to lock in. I'm going to press A to deselect. Okay, now I'm going to select here, hold shift and select here. Zoom back so you can see what's going on. Press E to extrude, left click to lock in, create a new geometry. I'm going to push that new geometry out just a little bit. With the manipulator, I'm going to press S to scale. I'm just going to pull that up some right there. Okay, now we're going to press A to deselect. I'm going to hold the middle mouse button to turn the view. I'm going to roll the mouse wheel to zoom back. I'm going to select here, hold shift, and select here, here, and here. I'm going to press X to bring up our delete menu. I'm going to choose faces to delete the faces there. I'm going to go to edge select. Now I'm going to hold Alt and select this edge right here. I'm going to press Shift S, which brings up our Snap to menu. I'm going to choose cursor to selected, puts our cursor right in the center of all these edges here, which is what we want. This entire time we've been in edit mode almost, and now we're going to click here to go to object mode. Okay, so we're going to select front here, and we're in front ortho local. So if you save your file here and by some chance you came in and you were wondering where everything went, you can always look and see that we're in local mode here. So anyway, we're in front ortho local, but we're also in object mode. So we're going to click here to go into edit mode. Okay, in Blender, wherever your 3D cursor is at is where objects tend to come into. So what we're going to do now is press Shift A, which brings up our add menu. Then we choose Mesh, UV Sphere. Look immediately to your left. You'll see your Add UV Sphere menu. Segment, you want to click here. Change this to 12. Rings, click here. Change this to 12 as well. Then we'll just left click to lock that in. And what we're going to do now is currently, and for most of this tutorial, we've been in global space. We're going to select here. You can see it says view global/local to go into local space. And this just allows us to work without having other objects that might distract your attention. Okay, what we're going to do now is press R to rotate on the X-axis, 9-0. Left click to lock in. We're going to choose face select, A to deselect, C for paint select, and we're going to paint all of these faces right here. We're going to right click to get out. We're going to select right view. We're going to choose S to scale on the Y axis, -1. Left click to lock in. We're going to pull this back some, about like that. We're going to hold the middle mouse button, turn to the side. We're going to press A to deselect. I'm going to hold shift and the middle mouse button to pan. I'm going to roll in a little bit. I'm going to press C for paint select. Select all these faces here. Right click to get out of here. Hold the middle mouse button to turn to the side, just to give a more 3D view. I'm going to press E to extrude on the y-axis and take this back to about here. Okay, I'm going to press A to deselect. I'm going to go to edge select. I'm going to select here. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to press Control B, which is a shortcut for bevel. I'm going to pull slightly. I'm going to left click to lock in. You're going to look immediately to your left to where you can see your bevel options. You're going to go to where it says segment. You're going to change this to 2. You're going to see where it says profile. You're going to change this from 0.500 to 1. And then left click to lock in. This will just keep this this edge hard for when we put a subdivision surface on here. You're going to press A to deselect. You're going to hold Alt, select this edge, press Control B, pull slightly, left click to lock in. Our settings are still in from when we beveled here, so this is fine. Okay, we're going to press A to deselect. We're going to hold Alt and select here, press Control E, choose Mark Seam, then press A to deselect. Then we're going to zoom in, hold Shift and the middle mouse button to pan. Zoom in some more, shift in the middle mouse button and pan, and I'm going to hold Alt, select here, press Control E, choose Mark Seam. Then I'm going to press A to deselect. I'm going to hold Alt, select, I'm going to hold Shift in the middle mouse button to pan. I'm going to select this edge right here, so I'm going to hold Alt, select right there, hold Control and press E and choose Mark Seam. Now I'm just going to roll my mouse wheel back. Okay, what we want to do is put a subdivision surface on here now. So you can click here and choose subdivision surface, which is fine. Or you can press A, deselect it there, which is good. We'll press A again to select everything. Now we're going to press Control 2. And what that does is that is a shortcut to put a subdivision surface modifier on here. And the subdivision surface modifier, it smooths things out. That's what it does. It puts a view of 2 and a render of 2 on here. So with this subdivision surface modifier on here, you can click this button right here to make it look like it's applied. Then you can press Z and then choose shade smooth. So we have nice smooth look to this, hence smooth shading. Okay, what we're going to do now is I'm going to press A to deselect. I'm going to click here to go to object mode. I'm then going to click here to go back to global mode. Here we are in global mode. I'm going to press S to scale this down some. I'm going to take the manipulator and pull this back some. I'm going to press S to scale it down some more. Hold the middle mouse button to turn to the side. Okay, what we're going to do now is select here. And I'm going to go to edit mode. We still have this edge selected here. So what we're going to do is press E to extrude, left click to lock in, press S to scale. You can see that intersecting with the eye. We're just going to pull this back. Like that. I'm going to zoom in. Hold Shift and the middle mouse button to pan. I'm going to select right here. I'm going to press O to turn the proportional editing tool on. I'm going to zoom back some. I'm going to press G to see the area of influence. I'm going to press Y to pull this back some. I'm also going to select here, hold Shift and select here, press G, and then Y to pull this back some. Then I'm going to press S to scale on the Z axis to pull this in some. Like that. Okay, I'm going to zoom in. Oops. I'm going to actually select here, press G and then Z. Pull this up a little. Pull that out a little. Select here, press J, then Z, and pull this up a little. And what I'm going to do now is press A to deselect. Press Control R. I'm going to put 2 loop cuts here. Left click to lock in. Left click again to totally lock in. And I'm going to click here, go to object mode. Okay, so what we're going to do now is select the eye. Pull this straight back. We're going to select front view. Shift C, which puts our 3D cursor directly in the center of our mesh. With this eye selected, we're going to press Shift D. I'm going to pull to the side just so I know it's duplicated. I'm going to right click to get it to jump right back. I'm going to go to the pivot options and change the pivot point from Blender's default pivot point, which is the median point, to the 3D cursor. I'm then going to press S to scale on the X-axis -1 and then choose left click to lock in. Okay, now we're going to click here, change the pivot point back to the median point. I'm going to press A to deselect. I'm going to select on our main mesh. I'm going to press Shift and hold the middle mouse button to pan down. I'm going to click here to go into edit mode. I'm going to press A to deselect here. And I am going to press click here to disable proportional editing. I'm going to click here. I'm going to select here, hold Shift and select here. I'm now going to press Shift D, left click to lock in. I just duplicated that geometry. I'm going to press E to extrude, left click to lock in. And so I created new geometry, now I extruded it. So I have new geometry to push out. I'm going to take that out like that. Because I have this part of this geometry selected, I'm going to press Control L. Lets me grab the entire, all of the pieces of geometry that are separate from this. So what I'm going to do is press S to scale on the X-axis now, like that. I'm going to pull this up to about here. Push forward slightly. I'm going to press S to scale on the Y-axis. I press S to scale on the Y-axis. Some more. Go to here. Zoom in. I'm going to select here. I'm going to press Alt O to turn the proportional editing tool on. I'm going to press G and then Z and pull that up somewhat like that. I'm going to press Control L to select the entire thing. I'm going to press I'm gonna go here, click here, and choose disable. And that's good for now. Okay, we're gonna click here, go back to object mode. Okay, what we're gonna do now is we're gonna press Control 2 to put a subdivision surface on here. This is our subdivision surface menu right here. We're gonna click here to make it look like it was applied. We're gonna press Z. Choose shade smooth. We're then going to click here, go into sculpt mode. Sculpt mode is Blender's kind of version, if you're familiar with ZBrush. It's kind of like using ZBrush here in Blender. We're going to click tools. When we click here, we have our different brushes that we can use. Grab lets you do, I think, most of the work, and most of the time I tend to use grab. We're going to go to smooth for now. Smooth is an excellent tool. However, the current default strength, it tends to do a little bit more than I wanted to do as far as dealing with fairly low poly geometry. So we're going to take this down to about here. Okay, and with that strength taken down, we can just go right here and you can see it does a beautiful job getting rid of, things like that. Okay, and we'll use the smooth tool here as well. Also right here. As well as right here. We'll go and select the grab brush. We'll zoom in here. Hold Shift and the middle mouse button to pan. adjustments here. Yeah, that the scope mode is spectacular. I mean, it's the way that it allows you to make very quick, fairly easy changes. Here, we'll zoom in some more. We'll just pull down here a little, zoom in some more. A little piece of geometry trying to come out. We'll just go into edit mode, see what that is. Vertice select. I'm going to select here just to move out of the way of that vertice, and we'll just push that in. There we go. Come right back into scope mode. Okay, what we're going to do now is we're going to click here, go to inflate. We're going to use this to shut her mouth. Zoom back here. Now we'll go to the grab tool. Trying to make it look like gravity is actually having some kind of effect. Okay, things like this right here, I want that softened up, so we'll go to the smooth tool, soften that up. This right here I actually want to be sharper. To do that, we'll select the crease tool. You want to make sure that the crease has add and subtract. You want to make sure you're on subtract. So I'll zoom in. I'm going to hold shift and the middle mouse button to pan. This crease just makes things sharper there. I'm going to click the smooth tool again, select these shoulders here. I'm going to click here. I'm going to select inflate again. Here. Inflating here, holding the middle mouse button to rotate just like before. I'm going to click here and go to the grab brush, pull out to the side a little here. Sometimes people say hilarious things when you are doing with female models. My art inspiration is largely from Bruce Timm. However, as far as woman inspiration, of course it's going to be my wife. So they say that when you they being whoever talks about art says you often try to draw yourself, even unconsciously. When I deal with a female, typically I think about my wife, Susan Arango, who's also a Blender user who actually taught me how to texture and UV. Anyway. Okay, and this is the fun part of Blender, I think. It's almost like, it feels like a reward coming here. You get to sculpt. It's kind of like you get to play. You know, it's not as technical. It's more artistic, if you will. And I click here. I'm going to go to the grab brush. I'm going to go here and just make sure that my angles. It's the thing with 3D, you've got to constantly look back and forth, because things can seem one way from the front. And if you push something too far, you can just come in, scope brush, and scope brush will help you with it. Go back to the grab brush. Okay, and with the grab brush, we're gonna up here. In some here. Zoom in close. You can see scope mode is it's just great for quick adjustments, and that's what I meant when I was telling you about the basic shape. Like once you got the basic shape in, the main thing is getting that in, because you can come into scope mode and fairly easily adjust things. Gonna grab. I'm just holding the middle mouse button to turn, and pushing and pulling vertices, faces, but in sculpt mode. And like I said, I have fun when I come in there. It feels like a reward. Hopefully it feels like that for you guys too. I'm just making small adjustments. I pulled the ears in there. I think I'm gonna pull the side of the face in here. I'm gonna zoom in close to the eyes, and I'm gonna zoom in. I'm gonna hold shift and middle mouse button to pan. So I'm gonna pull down slightly here, pull over here. Zoom back some so I have more influence. I'll pull down here, push up some there. I'm going to zoom in on these eyes more, pull down here. A little bit more, push up here a little. Pull out here a little. Yeah, and some things I still like to go back into edit mode, like this right here. We're actually gonna click here, go back to edit mode, and we'll select here, here, and here. Zoom in, select there, here, and we'll just select smooth vertex. Click here. Now we'll just go right back into scope mode. And hold shift and the middle mouse button to pan. Pull this over like this. Okay, we're just going to roll the mouse wheel back, hold the middle mouse button, and turn to the side. And grab here, pull this in some. Okay, what we're going to do now is hold the middle mouse button to rotate the view. We're going to roll the mouse wheel to zoom in. We're going to click here to go to object mode, and then with our main mesh selected, we're going to click and go to edit mode. We're going to press A to deselect there. We're going to roll the mouse wheel to zoom in. We're going to hold shift and the middle mouse button to pan. Let's zoom in a little bit more. Okay, now what we're going to do is go to edge select, select here, hold shift, and select here. Then we're going to press E to extrude. Right click to get out of that. I'm going to push down just a little. pull over to the side. I'm going to press E to extrude again. Left click to lock in. Just to get that new geometry. I'm going to pull to the side like this. I'm going to select this edge right here. Pull this back some. So select right here and pull this in actually some. There's one vertex right here. Let's deal with this just by pushing it down. Pulling it back some. So pull this back some. Push this down some. Just taking a look at him. Holding the middle mouse button to rotate. I go back to edge select. I'm going to select here and pull back just a little bit more. Okay. Okay, now what we're going to do is roll the mouse wheel back. We're going to click here, go to object mode. Right click here because objects tend to come in to Blender where the 3D cursor is at. We're going to press Shift A, go to Mesh, Plane, press R to rotate on the X axis, 9, 0. Left click to lock in. And this is going to be the beginning of our hair. So we're going to click here and go into edit mode for that plane. We're going to press S to scale on the X axis. Then we're going to press S to scale on the Z axis to make this longer, about like that. Left click to lock in.